We're going to have a conversation about a topic that, many of you know is near and dear to my heart, and that has to do with representation in multicultural picture books. When I think about representation, I can't help but do it as a psychologist because that's my training and background. And so I'd like to start off just by highlighting some of the things that some of the benefits that psychology has demonstrated for multicultural picture books, and then open it up for a conversation to kind of talk about some of the benefits you see, as well as some of the arcs that you've seen within multicultural picture books throughout your career and in the current moment. Okay? Okay. So why representation matters? Well, I'm an identity researcher, and representation matters because who we see depicted in the books that we read influences how we come to think about ourselves, what we see as possible for ourselves and people who look like us or come from cultural heritages like our own. And because picture books support literacy. When children see themselves represented in picture books, they're more engaged. And the research shows that they're more likely to read and retain the information that they encounter. And we're going to talk about that a little bit within the context of STEM and STEAM books today. So who gets to see themselves as scientists, who gets to see themselves as capable within this area, and who gets to picture their future selves within this context and absorb important academic and educational information. And also because picture books support positive social development. So they're mirrors, in the wise words of Rudine Sims Bishop. They provide reflections to us about who we are and who we can become. And they're also windows for who others can see as capable, potential, as scientists when they differ from backgrounds of their own. So that's the psychological kind of 30,000 foot view on this, but I'm really interested. I'd love to hear you guys talk about this topic and what it means to you, as well as maybe what you've seen that either excites or concerns you within this area.
I'd love to start if that's okay.
Yeah.
What you said just resonates so deeply with me, but I want to add to it as well as what is the message when children are not represented, right? And so much of the statistics around the diversity in children's books is that there's a lack of it, that there's not enough. And luckily, within the realm of children's books, we're doing work and we're doing more to increase the diversity. And so that's why I'm especially excited to be doing this with Charles Bridge, because so many of my books have been published by Charles Bridge, and I can tell the commitment that Charles Bridge has to increasing the diversity. So it's just so important on so many levels for the reasons that you were saying there, but also for additional reasons when thinking about some of the social interactions, about how those windows and sliding glass doors allow for others to step into the experiences of people who are different than them, to ultimately help build compassion and understanding and decrease prejudices. So while we're here to talk about it on the, related to math and STEM, there's so much more that can be cultivated by having these diverse books for children to read. So.
I'll go next, or Art, if you want to go. Okay. So diversity. I was just thinking about when I was thinking about this topic about how when we're trying to convince people about why diverse books are important, the people who weren't represented kind of already know that diverse books are important. We don't really even need all the statistics and all of the psychological reasons, because we know intrinsically that we weren't represented in the children's books, and that affected our lives. Growing up Indian American, I was born and raised in this country, and I had basically zero books. I don't think I ever saw myself in a book until I was an adult. And it sends you a message about kind of being a perpetual foreigner in the place where you live and the people that you know. And speaking directly about picture books, we know that kids are so literal, especially this age. It's the books that we have written. And when you set up your classroom with books that don't look like them, learning things that they are supposed to be learning about, it kind of starts them off with a disconnect. And just kind of finally, I wanted to remind everyone about the statistics about the fact that 50% of children are non-white at this point. And just thinking about the ramifications of our bookshelves and what we've seen so far, we're not really even close to parity. So that's what I wanted to say.
And I'll add in as well that one of the things that I've tried to do in all the books, not just this book, but in all the books that I write, if you think back on when you were in school and you learned about American Indian people, we're usually about one paragraph in a history book and usually about the Trail of Tears or maybe the Manifest Destiny, but it's always in the past tense. So what I like to do in my books is show us in the present tense and also in the future tense, thinking about American Indian people. We're still here. We're not just a historical anomaly in this country. We're still here. We're still thriving in these communities. We tend to live in both worlds, both our cultural homes and then also in the broader dominant culture. So I just wanted to reflect that in my book so that when, both American Indian kids and non-Native kids pick up the books, they see American Indian people just living the way that they do, doing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I think talking about the statistics and also the current experience that Art is talking about, I'm really excited about what I'm seeing in books coming out now. It feels to me that the assumed reader has changed, and it's now assumed that kids that we were are reading, and those books are framed differently. And I'm seeing a lot more diversity within those diverse categories. For example, when it comes to Latinos, like there's a huge range of experiences in that category. And I'm starting to see more of those varying experiences represented, and I'm really hopeful about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add one more piece. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fine. Okay, great. Something that I really appreciated the opportunity to do, and also across my colleagues here, their books, is that I appreciate that we're allowed to write diversity, but from a casual standpoint, one that doesn't necessarily have to be tied to race, but just a Black child, an American Indian child, whomever, just living, just existing. And so the stories and the content or the specific topic in that story doesn't have to be, it's just about being Black in America, but it's about a Black kid just being an American in America. And so those casual stories are something that I try to write too, but I think they're just as important because, like what Amitha was saying, kind of, just this opportunity for highlighting that you're not necessarily an outsider. You're not. You're an American. You're a person here. You're living in the current situation. You just happen to have Black skin or happen to have certain cultural traditions, whatever. But that you're just as important and your story is important. And we know with our identities, we have multiple facets within our identities. And so when stories are written in a casual way, like each of those get to be highlighted. And on top of that, you're an American living your life in this country.